My whole day as a major league umpire revolves around me being ready at 7 p.m., right? What I eat, what I sleep, what I do during the day, all revolves around me being ready at 7 p.m. I didn't have to work 8 hours before. I didn't have to rush to the game. I didn't have to do any of that, right? And I didn't have to dress in my trunk. And so there's a lot of what I can control at the major league level. I was in complete control of, right? I had the ability to be at my best most nights when it was game time. I didn't have to worry about my car not starting or, having a tough day at my other job. And those are the things that I really admire about amateur officials. They have to go out, and nobody's expecting less from them.
Be willing to take some criticism, constructive criticism, not criticism, not from parents and that coaches, but from your partners, and your supervisors. They're going to try and help you get better. And you have to like officiating. If you're doing it just for the money, it's, in my opinion, it's you're not going to be as good as official as you could be. You have to have a passion for it. It can't be just about, I understand people do it for extra money, to help get some groceries and professional officials are paid, very nice, and that definitely helps. But you have to have a passion for it in the first place. So, grow to love it, be able to take a little criticism, both constructive and have a little thick skin. But, you have to have a passion for the officiating. You got to love it.
I think for me is that it's been an unbelievable journey. Officiating has allowed me to experience things I never thought I would ever get to experience, ever, right? It started for me on a dirt field in Hartford, Connecticut, working local games. I moved on to the University of Connecticut and then spent some time in the minors. Never in a million years did I think I would be a professional official. In the journey that it has taken me on, I met my wife because of it. We have a son because of it. I am the luckiest guy in the world. I made a great living. I retired at the age of 53 because of it. And that's the thing that's really exciting about officiating for me. You never know where it's going to take you, right? You never know. For me, it was to the big leagues.
And now, episode 19, letter Q, quality. Join hosts Dana Pappas and Nate Acosta with special guests Gary Darling and Jim Reynolds on the From A to Zebra podcast.
Welcome back to the From A to Zebra podcast. I'm Dana Pappas here with my co-host Nate Acosta and two outstanding guests.
On today's episode, we are covering the letter Q, and our topic of the day is quality, a word you hear a lot about in all aspects of officiating.
Our special guests on today's episode come to us from the baseball umpiring world. We are excited to introduce Gary Darling, a retired MLB umpire for nearly 3 decades and current president of UMPS Care Charities, and Jim Reynolds, retired MLB umpire for almost 25 years, current MLB umpire supervisor and vice president of UMPS Care Charities. Gentlemen, welcome to the show.
Thank you. You
Thanks
make us sound way more important than we are or were. So that was nice, Dana.
Quality. I don't know where that came from, but we'll let it run.
So somewhere in your career, there was quality.
There had to be.
Yes.
Every now and then.
Well, before we get into the topic of the day, can you tell us a little bit about your umpiring journeys, how you got started, where your journey led you, and what you're doing today? Gary first, and then Jim.
Yeah, I played baseball through junior college and took some sports officiating classes. But, as growing up as a kid, we played a lot of baseball, played all the different sports and stuff. And if we ever had an extra guy and it was baseball season, one of us might umpire if we were playing a game pickoff or pickle or tag up or whatever we named it. One of the guys might officiate the play. So I kind of always liked that a little bit. And then after the sports officiating classes at then junior college, we did all different sports, but my main one that I always loved was baseball. And got a hold of one of the local assigners in Sacramento and started umpiring around there. One day I might be doing a slow pitch softball game, and that night I'm doing a senior men's baseball league. And then one of the first guys I worked with that had been to umpire school, and he gave me the information on the Bill Kinnaman umpire school and rode away for that and ended up going on a couple of years. And lucky enough to get a job in the minor leagues in 1980 and worked until through 2013 when I had to get off the field. So, yeah, just a passion for baseball, and it turned into a big passion for officiating and umpiring, and turned into a, pretty decent career.
Yeah, decent.
Decent or quality? Quality.
Quality, excuse me.
Yeah,
quality. It was a
we're
quality.
all the way to Q.
Yeah,
Quality.
Did he say 1980?
He did.
Make sure. Yeah, okay. That's wow. Games were in black and white back then, Gary, right?
We didn't they didn't. When I first got to the big leagues, you got a little nervous if you had the game of the week. That was the only game on TV, pretty much.
I remember that. My journey's a little bit different. My journey started when I was in college at the University of Connecticut. UConn had a 1-credit course for umpiring. The reason the varsity coach at UConn, Andy Baylock, had done that was because he was one of the few Division I programs in New England that had a JV program. So to pay for the officials for the JV games, he would run a class, and then the students would go out there and we would umpire the JV regular season and the varsity fall games. A good friend of mine at UConn got me interested in umpiring. It was something that he had always wanted to do, and he was the one that informed me of this class. And for my freshman and sophomore year, he continued to try to get me involved, and I just wasn't interested at all. Really, I played sports my whole life, football, baseball, basketball. Was a decent athlete, but officiating was not something that I ever thought about doing. My father had done some Little League stuff back in our town in Wethersfield, Connecticut, but it wasn't something that I was actively pursuing until I took this course. He finally convinced me my junior year, fell in love with umpiring immediately. We had no idea what we were doing out there doing varsity fall. It was Mo Vaughn and Biggio and all those kind of guys were playing in the Big East at the time. So that's who I was officiating. There you go. And that's who I was officiating. And we had no idea what we were doing. So we did it for 2 years. And then my buddy wanted to go to umpire school. And I was a communication journalism major and had a job lined up with the CBS affiliate in Hartford. And I went back to those people and said, hey, I'm going to try this umpiring thing, umpire schools in January. There's going to be 450 kids going between the 3 different schools at the time. They're only going to take about 40. I'll be back in February. They're like, yeah, come on back. And so me and my buddy went, and we were both lucky enough to make it out of umpire school and get assigned to the minor leagues together. So one of the cool parts about this story is the guy that got me involved is Dan Asonia, who is a current major league crew chief and was the crew chief of the 2022 World Series. So we've both been very lucky and blessed to make it and do this job at a very high level.
Yeah, I would say I was laughing when Gary said he had a decent career after reading reading both of your resumes. I think decent would be the understatement of this podcast. So I appreciate your humility. However, let's be real. So you both served the sport as active umpires at the highest level that anybody would wish to attain, and you've really continued to do so in your retirement. Both of you are heavily involved with UMPS Care Charities and now with Sports Officials Care. Can you all tell us why you chose to be involved with those organizations and really what they mean to you? And Jim, we'll start off with you this time.
Yeah, absolutely. This is a journey kind of that Gary and I have taken together. Gary and I hadn't really known each other until I got to the big leagues a little, and now we're neighbors in Phoenix. And it's been one of the greatest parts about my involvement with UMPS Care and now Sports Official Care is getting to know Gary and his family well. I consider him part of our family and have been very, very lucky to have a quality friend like Gary. He's been a mentor when I was on the field and certainly a mentor to me in life off the field. He's a super individual. And one of the biggest reasons we wanted to be involved with UMPS Care, and I'll speak for my end, but I know this was a kind of vision we both had, was, as Major League umpires, we're very visible. Most of the people have a big problem with us, and it's not like we have fans, but we knew we could use our visibility to do more, right? And I first came to the big leagues. Group was, hey, Tommy's wife is in need of some surgery, but he kicked in some money, and that's how we used to throw some money on the table, or, Tommy's daughter is in trouble, and that was kind of the umpires charity. we kind of looked out for each other, but we thought we could do more than just that. And through UMPS Care, we've been able to. It's an organization that has grown over the 18 years that I was have been involved with it, led by Gary. And, we went from throwing $300 on the table to raising over $750,000 this year for some initiatives that are just unbelievable. We have a family care program, which is where all this started, right? Taking care of the umpires that came before us who weren't as lucky as we were. They didn't have the pensions, didn't have the time off, didn't have the pay that we recognize now. And so that was our first initiative, taking care of the guys who came before us that set the table for our profession and their families. It's grown into a ticket program for kids that are awaiting adoption. We have a college scholarship program. We have an official leadership program, which we go into the communities and try to recruit younger kids to be officials and give back to their communities. So those are the reasons that I got involved, because I thought we could do more, and we have been doing more, and it's something that I'm extremely proud of. And to be honest with you, I think it's the best thing that the Major League umpires do.
I agree. And Gary, for you?
Very much the same as Jim. I mean, we both we started at the same time. I mean, UMPS Care, it kind of started with the Helping Hand Fund. It was the fund Jimmy was talking about when guys would just some money on the table. Well, morphed into there was a labor dispute years ago, and a bunch of guys lost their jobs and their checks were cut off, and it was a way a lot of the guys that were working would throw the money into the pot, and they called it the Helping Hand Fund. And if the guys that were out of work needed a little help that month, they chopped up the money and gave it to all the different guys. And then when I was one of the ones on the streets at the time, but when I got my job back, we wanted to try and bridge some gaps between the guys that in that labor dispute that took the jobs from the guys that had them and all that kind of stuff. And we wanted to, continue helping the guys that didn't, that still needed help, not just the umpires that lost their job in the labor dispute, but like Jim said, some of the older umpires that, couldn't make a mortgage payment or whatever. We did that. And I went to Faye, we kind of started UMPS Care that way. And I went to Faye Vincent, and he says, how can we I asked him, how can we, raise some more money? And he goes, well, it's kind of hard to raise money asking people for money for retired umpires. You have to come up with something, another kind of initiative. And there happened to be some other umpires at the time doing the Blue for Kids. They were doing the hospital visits, and they were having some kids out, the big brothers, big sisters, they're having them out to the ballpark. So we kind of morphed together. So that's, UMPS Care started in 2006, and soon after we morphed together with the Blue for Kids. And that group with Marvin Hudson and Samuel Dirk, who was our first executive director at UMPS Care. So it's really just about giving back. And like Jim said, I mean, we have the scholarship program now, and that's how it kind of morphed in, not the scholarship program part, but, our official leadership program has gotten bigger and bigger over the years. But we knew there was a shortage of officials, not just in baseball. So we got to, that's how the sports officials care, that we could try and encompass all the different sports. And I guess, people in general want to give back, and UMPS Care has helped. I think it helped mend a lot of the bad blood from that labor dispute back in the day too. I can speak for Jim and I particularly. I mean, we weren't close friends at all by any stretch until we started UMPS Care and got, figure out he wasn't a bad guy. He's a quality person. And,
He's all right.
Said, I mean, it's just, you don't know somebody, until you know them. And then, we get along fine and everything. We've done good things with UMPS Care, and we're both very proud of it.
Well, I just think it's awesome, because I think that every small officiating group from youth leagues all the way to pros, we're all trying to help each other out, and we're all trying to give back to each other. And whether that's a birthday card or show up to somebody's birthday or help with a little financial, in a financial crisis or something. But, something as small as, $300 starting into a charity is just not only, amazing, it's just the quality thing to do, I would imagine.
Yeah, and one of the things that, Gary and I, and there have been, there hasn't been any umpire that hasn't been involved in my 18 years. We're the ones with our hands on the wheel, but, guys like Larry Young helped us start this. And then all 76 current umpires are involved. So, Gary and I kind of keep our hands on the wheels and keep this thing going forward, but the wind is filled with the energy of all the major league umpires.
Yeah, it was good to give a shout out to Larry Young too. I know he's big with NASO and all that, but he was the original president of UMPS Care and did a lot of the base work with the nonprofit, the 501c3 and all that kind of stuff. So
speaking of quality human beings, Larry Young, what a good man he is. My goodness.
No doubt.
Well, with your involvement with these charities, sets up our topic of the day, which is quality. And in our world, obviously, it's important to be a quality official. Know your rules, know your mechanics. But how important is it that individuals are also just quality human beings and have good character? Gary, you want to start with that one?
Yeah, I mean, I just people have to know that the people officiating their game, whether it's, little Johnny's Little League game or a D1 basketball game or an NFL game, that they can trust the product on the field, that there are quality people, that maybe calls are going to be missed, but it's for no other reason than human error and calls being missed. It's just, there's no other agenda. There's no other issues, quality people that, or most of them are, pillars in their community, wherever their hometown is. And they run businesses, they're lawyers, doctors, and they have lives off the court. And they, there hasn't been too many bad situations over the years with officials that got caught in bad spots. There was, the NBA official and baseball's always done their best to, keep that part out of it. So I think just people have to know and trust that the people out there are not trying to do anything to harm teams and not let little Johnny win. It's just stuff happens.
Right. And you made a good point. I mean, the number of actual situations, negative press are few and far in between. I mean, it's extremely of the millions of people that have officiated, it's a very small percentage. And so I like the fact that, for those listeners out there that aren't officials, 0.9% of us are really quality individuals and quality human beings. So,
yeah. And you bring up a great point, Nate, because I think there's two ways to look at quality with officials, right? One of the things that I tell people when they ask is, there's only 76 major league umpires. People are surprised by that small number, right? And they're also, I talk about the people. They ask a lot about the people. Of course, there's the, you always get the same two or three people. Oh, how Joe West, our big personalities. How's Angel Hernandez? How are all these people? Being a member of such a small fraternity, and I'll get the quality here. Our staff is much like anybody else that works in an office, right? There's 76 people. Hey, man, there's 10 that I really like, that I get along with, and there's 66 other guys that I respect and will say hi to. But to say that all 76 guys are my cup of tea wouldn't be the truth. But I'll say this. All 76 will take quality out on the field, and that's our goal every night. It doesn't matter what three other guys that I've ever worked with in the major leagues. Our intent in our passionately, definitely at the professional ranks. I think even at the amateur ranks, I talk to a lot of amateur officials, and nobody ever puts on the official's uniform and wants to get something wrong on purpose, right? Nobody. You're all trying, and that's the common thread from little league umpire to major league umpire, right? We're all trying to go out there and give our best performance every night. Give a quality performance every night. And I think that's the common thread, Nate. Like, I think there are some really quality people that I've met, Gary being one of them, in my role as a major league umpire and in my journey as a major league umpire. I'm not going to tell you that everybody's a quality person, but what I will tell you unequivocally is they will all go out there and do their best to give a quality performance every night.
I think you guys are making such good points, because one of the things I talk about a lot is coming from the high school world. My whole career has been in that side. Working with officials, it's really afforded me the opportunity to meet individuals from the professional ranks, from MLB, NFL, NBA, and people will ask me, like, what are they like? Everybody wants to know what the professional officials are like. And I'm like, they're just good people. And they're always surprised when I say that for some reason. And when I tell them, they want to give back to our level, and they're looking to help people and pay it forward to the sport. And they're always very, very surprised, because I think there's this, I don't know, this expectation that because you're an MLB umpire, an NBA official, or an NFL official, that you're going to be just above everybody else. I don't know what the misconception is. But when I say they're so down to earth and they're just such quality human beings, everybody's like, really? Like, you could talk to them? And I'm like, yeah, I could call them right now. Like, they're just good people. So I think that's what makes officiating so unique, is it is, by and large, we know that there's bad seeds and everything, but good people. And I think that's what makes officiating so cool, and it makes you want to be around it more. So
They you hear this term a lot in officiating as a fraternity, right?
mhm.
And I don't mean that gender based wise.
No, not all.
We can call it a sorority too, if that makes people more comfortable. But it's a fraternity. It doesn't matter if you're working. I remember my first game was a junior high game, the first time I ever worked, and I tried just as hard in that game as I did during the World Series. There was no difference in my effort and in the performance that I wanted to give. And I think that all of us officials want to give every night, right? We try to be perfect every night and get better from there. So.
Absolutely. And that actually leads right into the next question, which, Jim, you've touched on a little bit. But as officials administrators, we often hear talk about putting a quality product on the floor, field, diamond each game in terms of the officiating crews. What does that really mean to you as far as a quality product on the field? Jim,
Jerry,
do you want to start us off?
Yeah, I can start with that.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm in a unique position now because I'm going into my third year as a supervisor, right? So we kind of look at this with two different hats. Certainly, the aspects of what I think a quality official is, or what I'm trying to do every night is ready for the game, prepared for the game, out and hustle and give it everything that I've got for that evening or for that afternoon. And this is one of the things that I talk to amateur officials about all the time. I had that aspect a lot easier than the amateur official, right? Because my whole day as a major league umpire revolves around me being ready at 7 p.m., right? What I eat, what I sleep, what I do during the day, all revolves around me being ready at 7 p.m. I didn't have to work 8 hours before. I didn't have to rush to the game. I didn't have to do any of that, right? And I didn't have to dress in my trunk. And so there's a lot of what I can control at the major league level. I was in complete control of, right? I had the ability to be at my best most nights when it was game time. I didn't have to worry about my car not starting or, having a tough day at my other job. And those are the things that I really admire about amateur officials. They have to go out, and nobody's expecting less from them. I don't know if you guys have ever been to an amateur kids game. The parents, like I tell people all the time, I had it much easier than the local official, because all I had to do with deal with was Derek Jeter, right? Like I didn't have to deal with Mr. and Mrs. Jeter and Derek, right? Like Mr. Jeter wasn't yelling at me through the screen. And
he might have been, but he was sitting in the booth. You couldn't hear him.
Yeah, I probably couldn't hear him. But, those are the things we talk about quality officiating, right? Control the things you can't control. You can control effort. You can control knowing the rules. You can control that stuff. When I'm looking at officials now, when I'm looking at minor league kids now, those are the things I'm looking for, right? Are you in control of the things that you can control? Are you hustling? Are you there? Are you present? Are you ready to go? Are you applying the rules? Are you studying the rules? All those things that we can control as officials. I think that's what I look for. And that's what I prided myself in when I was on the field.
Love that. Gary, same question to you.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, it's probably different at every level. I mean, a quality look is, you start with the uniform. Is it kind of pressed and clean? Are your shoes clean? Are you on time? Are you approachable? Or you just grumpy all the time? Sometimes you got to be grumpy and yell back on the field or the court or whatever the case may be. But you have to still have to be approachable. And it's going to be different for a little league game, like Jim said. Those guys are coming from work day, or maybe that is their full time job. They might have had a soccer game that afternoon. They're working a little league game that night. So just being prepared, knowing what sport you're working, and hustling. You got to look the part, but you don't have to jump out of. Sometimes you can over hustle too. Then because then you run past the play, or you're so worried about selling a call that you forget to get the call right. You see it all the time. Jim and I were just at an umps care event this past weekend where they were all 13 to 18-year-old kids who had never umpired before, or very little, and they all want to be all flashy. Well, then they forget about getting the call right. You just go back. My first part of the big leagues, I would try and sell stuff all the time, but I would be jumping at calls and missing them. But you just sometimes you go back to the basics. I know this isn't about, quality product on the court, but that's different for everybody. Whether you don't have to jump out of your shoes just because you have a close play. They don't really care what you look like. They just want to know if you got the play right. So, whatever that works for everybody in different ways.
You both worked multiple World Series games in addition to numerous postseason contests, all-star games. Officials that get to work these types of contests earn these assignments through quality of their work, throughout the season. What are some important qualities or traits that officials can embody to get them to that next level, to get them on the big assignments or an all-star game, a championship at any level?
I think a lot of times it goes back to judgment. That's, you can control being on time, and, you can't always control how many plays you have and how many ejections you have. But if you're too aggressive and causing those ejections, that might hurt you. But I think it really goes back to your judgment. Whatever you have to do, whatever makes you comfortable and helps you get plays right, because I think that's got to be number one. If and willing to want to get better, you have to want to try and learn something every day, and you have to work at it. You have to have a passion for the job, and you want to get better every day. And that's a whole learning curve. I think bottom line, get your plays right. That'll help you to go to the next level.
Jim?
Yeah, for me, it's kind of, you just can't wake up and work a World Series game, right? And Gary touched on it. For me, it started, I considered my 7 years in the minors and my 24 years in the big leagues as a 31-year job interview, in which I took every pitch and every play as seriously as I could, whether I be in the low minor leagues or when I was working in the big leagues. Of course, I had days that were better than others, and I'm not going to pretend and sit here and pretend that I was locked in for 21 straight years. But we touched on it. I think that the guys that are successful at officiating take pitches and plays off. They're learning something from every game. Remember, in the low, when I was working my way through the minors, if I was struggling with the inside pitch or timing got quick at certain situations, I was very present to trying to correct those things and going out there every day with a plan to get better. From the time I walked on the field in rookie ball to the time I walked off the field in 2022. I think that's the thing that gets you ready to work those games. Because you're never, you don't understand what playoffs is or World Series is until you're there. And so if you're not prepared, and if you don't have the little stuff down, flipping a switch just because it's a World Series game is not going to work. So for me, it was being prepared and working on something every day.
I think the one thing for me that you guys mentioned but didn't mention is just patience and time, right? And that's being able to, the biggest quality is having that patience to almost work through that, get the reps in, work through the fundamentals, get all the things in line prior to that first playoff assignment, and so that when you're there, it's clockwork, it's fundamentals, everything's clicking, and so I think a lot, especially now, you have these younger officials that, they want to go straight to the World Series, and their patience, and so they're not putting in the time on the little things. And so I think the biggest quality for me would be patience. And with that, you're going to be ready when that time comes.
Back when I first broke in, you couldn't work a special event, a playoff event, until your 6th year.
Oh, wow.
And usually it was the All-Star game was your first one. Now I think there are guys in their 2nd, 3rd year that are getting left field, right field lines in the postseason, the 1-game wild card games that they used to have. But I think that's the societal thing. Everybody wants to be the CEO when they get out of college. They want to, when they get out of umpire school, they're ready for major leagues, because the problem is the guys on TV make it look pretty easy, whether it's the NBA, the NFL. I mean,
well, you don't know what you don't know. I mean, they don't know until they're in that situation, and it's the bottom of the 9th inning, and something funny happens, and they've never seen it, and they absolutely they don't have the tools to get through that situation. So yeah, be patient.
For sure. That's huge. One of the analogies that I used when I was working with my younger guys on my crew, and certainly with the minor league guys, I grew up playing basketball, right? And, you got 10 kids on your team, and with 2 minutes to go, it's a tie game, and the coach can only put 5 of you out there, right? And the other 5 are on the bench. And are you going to be one of those 5 guys on the bench that is pouting because you're not out there because you didn't get the assignment to try to win the game? Or are you going to be one of the guys that is cheering everybody on, understanding that your time's going to come, right? And it's a great litmus test, Nate, like you said, about how guys handle not getting postseason assignments, right? And where they are in their journey. And I got my first World Series, I think, in my 15th or 17th year. And I remember to this day putting the ball in play on my plate job in Game 3 in San Francisco going, can you believe they put me in charge of this plate? And because I could have had 100 years. You don't know until you get through it. And I was grateful for the experience that I had prior to that assignment, because I did survive it, and I did do a decent job. And like you said, I don't think anybody benefits from being there too soon.
Yeah, you spent, 15, 17 years preparing for that moment. Yeah. And when you were there, it felt good. It felt good to be quality because you had that preparation.
No doubt.
I think that's an important lesson for officials at all levels, because coming from the high school side, I don't know how many times I would have a 2nd-year official who was upset because they weren't working the state tournament. And I'm like, you're not ready. Well, what do you mean I'm not ready? You just don't have the experience. Like, we don't want to set you up for failure. And if we put you in this game that's way above your skill level, you're going to not have a good time doing it, because you're probably not going to be as good as you think you are in your head. And I think that reality of the experience sets you up for success is something that officials at the high school level, at the collegiate level, everybody does need to have that patience, because that experiential stuff is so important with what officials in all sports are doing. So that's such a great topic.
Yeah, and I don't want to confuse my analogy here, because I want 5 guys on the bench that want to be in there.
Yep.
Too, right? I don't want anybody on the bench that's like, man, let Tommy handle it, let Nate handle it. They understand that they're close. They might not be ready, but I want them to want to be out there.
Absolutely.
Yeah, you put them in too soon, and then that something goes sideways. Some people don't recover from that. They don't want to officiate anymore because it was too big of a shit house, or they just weren't ready. And that probably more at the amateur level. I mean, there's a lot of guys or girls that stopped umpiring Little League because of Mr. and Mrs. Jeter.
And enjoy
it. It's not for everybody. You got to want to do it, and then that's half the battle too, though.
Sure. Enjoy the journey, because when you get those games, those are career. They'll make it or break you, right? Yeah, it's career ending.
I'm laughing because I tell the young guys all the time, be careful what you wish for.
Yeah,
right.
I've
been there. I've been there.
And you want to establish. I mean, the other part of that is establishing, your reputation, your name. Because now when you are given that opportunity, you know what, you have a little bit of credibility. So if you make a mistake, you know what, hey, it's Jim. He's worked a lot of big baseball games. Hey, maybe just take a step back. Well, if they don't know who you are, you're done. That's career.
there's no doubt.
It's career ending. And so that time is also name recognition and just bring in that next level of respect too that you bring. So
We call it pecking order.
pecking order.
Yes.
And being on the management side now, the guys that the teams want out there aren't necessarily the guys that score the best, right? They're guys that people feel like they can talk to, that do a very, very good job, but have all the tools, right? Not just, they're really good at that box or they get their plays right. They have all the tools. Just because you have one really good tool doesn't make you a carpenter. So,
Ooh, I love that.
it's on a T-shirt. I'll have them print it up. And
Side job.
That's your side hustle. I love it.
yeah, I'll have a side. I got to supplement my income.
Hey, whatever works.
Yeah.
So, not really on the topic of quality, but something that our audience definitely wants to hear, because we know that officials and people in the sports world love the storytelling aspect of officiating. So for both of you, what is your favorite memory or memories of your time as an MLB umpire?
I would, 1998, Steve Ripley was made a crew chief for the first time, and they put three of us with him, myself, Larry Poncino, God rest his soul, and Mike Winters. That was our crew. And I really thought they thought we were going to fail. I thought they put us together that these guys just won't be able to handle it. Well, I mean, we had so much fun. We did a great time on the field. And that was the year of home run derby with McGuire and Sosa.
Oh man.
So when they put back then, the whole schedule didn't come out at once, and they had us on the crew to work home run. We call it home run derby weekend, and we're at Labor Day in St. Louis when McGuire hit 60, 61, and 62.
Oh my gosh.
So that was one of the first time they used the balls that were marked, and you had to keep track of what, ball number one's in play, ball number two's in play. Now you had to be worried about calling balls and strikes, but you had to make sure you put the right ball in play because it was numbered. But that was huge. That year we all worked. There was a 1-game playoff with the Giants and the Cubs. We worked that. I think Ponce worked the NLCS, and the rest of us worked divisional. So that was one. And then, when I lost my job in '99, got my job back in 2002, and then got my first World Series in 2003. So kind of a little redemption. Everybody thought, well, these 22 were let go because they were the worst umpires in baseball. And then you get your job back and you get the World Series. And the next year I was named a crew chief. So, that was kind of more self-gratifying that I was a quote-unquote quality umpire. I wasn't just dismissed because of bad ratings. So it was, I think those two things really stick out. Get my first World Series after losing my job and then home run derby.
Those are awesome.
Yeah, I think the thing for me is, is the people that I had the opportunity to meet and work with, and you go through this journey with, because it's a very unique journey. It's high intensity. It's a very unique job. And so making the friends that I've made working with people, mentors like John Hirschbeck and Gary and Tim Welke, guiding me through my younger part of my career. And then, some of my best friends, Bill Welke and Dan Asonia and Eric Cooper, God rest his soul, and made a lot of great friends, feeling Colbreth throughout this that, I'm still really, really good friends with. Those are the great things about this job. I think the one story that people like to hear about me is the only part of me that's not Italian is my last name. So I have the Italian temperament. I talk with my hands. I'm probably quick to anger when justified to be quick to anger. And so one day I'm in. Well, yeah, on the field sometimes, and I'm going to get to the justified part here shortly, Gary. One day I'm a younger umpire, and again, The first five, this is before the box and, the little TV box. And, they didn't believe a thing I said for the first 5 years of my career because there was no way to gauge it. So if it wasn't down the middle of the plate, somebody was always testing me, right? Whether it be the catcher, the pitching coach, the manager, the batter. So I'm in San Francisco one day and the Giants are losing 8-1. And Bonds is not playing. And it's not a big deal. It's the bottom of the eighth. And all of a sudden, he comes up to pitch hit. And so, ball one, ball two, ball three, next pitch, probably a little off the plate. And I'll tell you this, I think Barry had a better eye than I did. There's a lot of times I'd be like, yeah, that's a strike. And he'd be like, and I go, you might have a point to myself. So he was extremely talented with that. But I called strike one on him as he's taking off his elbow pads ready to go to first, right? And I'm like, whack, strike one. And he gives me a look and gets back in the box and shakes his head, right? And the next pitch is ball four. Now, Barry didn't really hang out with teammates. Barry wasn't really invested necessarily in the day-to-day success of the Giants. And so he steps on first, and now they bring in a pinch runner. And so now he runs right by me, and he's staring at me the whole time, right? Over strike one on an at-bat in which he walked in 5 pitches.
He probably
didn't want to have to get up and hit
anyway.
Yeah, right. Like, I know what this means. Like, okay, now he's engaged with me. Okay, so this is right. And then I watch him, and instead of going into the dugout and down into the tunnel and into this clubhouse, he stands on the top step. Now, Rich Aurelia is the next batter, and I had a relationship with Rich, a pretty decent relationship. He was a pretty fair guy, and I end up ringing up Rich Aurelia to end the inning. And he jumps up in the air, and I'm like, Rich, good pitch, and but I hear somebody from the dugout, and, I kind of once, he yells again, and finally I just look over there, and I'm done. The guy's probably watched 8 pitches the whole game between, hey, we need you to warm up, to him walking, to watching Rich's at bat. He probably saw 8 pitches of my performance, and now he's going to comment on my performance for the day, right? So this is the justification part, Gary. You can't watch 8 pitches and tell me what kind of day I'm having is the point I'm getting at. So I end up running him, right? Like, just, he's on the dugout, run him, jumps over the fence, and Felipe Alou's their manager, and he's now in my face, and he's yelling, and I'm just thinking to myself, you've seen 8 pitches in your... And so finally, and I guess I'm going to use a profanity here, so, get ready to beat this, but I finally just say, you ain't that good. And the point of the comment was, you ain't that good to watch 8 pitches and tell me how I'm going to do, right? Like how I'm doing that night. So all I say during the whole argument is, you ain't that good, right? And everybody stops. It's dead silence. Philippe looks at me. Bonds looks at me. My crew chief looks at me. And then it just ends the whole thing, right? And so they go away. And I'm like, yeah, I probably shouldn't have said that, but whatever, right? We finished the game. The next day, now we talk about one of the best lessons I ever got was from John Hirschbeck. He said, don't ever read the local paper. And the way that I explain the local paper to today's day and age is that was our social media, right? The local paper was the social media. So, but that day I picked up the San Francisco Chronicle the next day, and Felipe Alou goes in the article, Jim told Barry he wasn't that good. Jim must have been a hell of a high school baseball player. So that's the story people like to hear.
That's a good one.
Yeah, no, I had a unique ability to stay kind of under the radar most of my career, so I don't have a lot of those. But people like hearing about Bonds and that story there, so that's the one that I kind of try to tell.
Thank you for that. That was fantastic.
Yeah. That's probably in all of our episodes, that is probably like the realest story that we've had.
Yeah. No, and I just remember as a young umpire going, don't say anything stupid, don't swear, don't do this. And I just snapped internally and it came out.
Whatever button needed to be pushed, he pushed it.
I just realized that was going to shut it all down.
I was actually hoping that you were gonna end the story with, and then Bonds came back out the next day and was like, "Hey, you got it right," or something.
Let me tell you,
Not Barry.
not Barry. He wasn't that way. Plus, back then there was no way to tell if you got it right.
That's true.
There was no box. There was your opinion versus his opinion, right?
If you look at if you look at the number of ejections Jim had and I had, if I would have said the same thing, I would have had 113 instead of 112 because I might have got a few more guys by telling Bonds it wasn't that good.
Yeah.
I said things like that plenty of times, but they usually just didn't go away then.
To our officials that are our listeners that are officials, going back to career ending, Jim needed a little clout before he could say something like that.
Yeah, no, that's exactly it. And that's you brought that up earlier, and Gary and I talked about this, and I talked to my young guys on my crew when I was working. You save up house chips. And there were times where I was a really good employee and handled everything the right way, knowing that when I needed to snap, my bosses were going to give me a little leg room, a little leeway there because they knew that wasn't my go-to card all the time. And so it's one of the things that I try to instill with our staff now, and especially the younger guys. When not everything has to turn into a screaming match.
Well, not anymore. That's for sure.
No
They don't
doubt.
even like you say anything back.
Well, we do have a final question for both of you. So on the From A to Zebra podcast, we have a mission every week, and that's to educate, elevate, and excite our listeners. What can you tell our audience about umpiring that achieves this mission? Gary, you go ahead.
Be willing to take some criticism, constructive criticism, not criticism, not from parents and coaches, but from your partners, and your supervisors. They're going to try and help you get better. And you have to like officiating. If you're doing it just for the money, it's, in my opinion, it's you're not going to be as good as official as you could be. You have to have a passion for it. It can't be just about. I mean, I understand people do it for extra money, to help get some groceries and professional officials are paid, very nice, and that definitely helps. But you have to have a passion for it in the first place. So, grow to love it, be able to take a little criticism, both constructive and have a little thick skin. But, you have to have a passion for the officiating. I mean, you got to love it.
Jim?
I think for me is that it's been an unbelievable journey. Officiating has allowed me to experience things I never thought I would ever get to experience, ever, right? It started for me on a dirt field in Hartford, Connecticut, working local games. I moved on to the University of Connecticut and then spent some time in the minors. Never in a million years did I think I would be a professional official. And the journey that it has taken me on, I met my wife because of it. We have a son because of it. I am the luckiest guy in the world. I made a great living. I retired at the age of 53 because of it. And that's the thing that's really exciting about officiating for me. You never know where it's going to take you, right? You never know. For me, it was to the big leagues. But the experiences that I have are not unique to the experiences, right? I had great people. I worked with some really cool, and really, my office was really cool for 31 years, right? I worked in some of the greatest offices in the world. But I had those experiences when I was working as an amateur official too. I met great people. I had great mentors, people that were pushing me, that were excited for me to get into the minor leagues, that were excited for me, as excited as I was when I got the call to be a full-time major league umpire. And so I think officiating is an avenue that can take you places and generate experiences that you never thought you'd be a part of. And that's what I'm grateful for. Absolutely.
Speaking of offices, both of you, one answer. Your favorite office, Gary?
I would say, I guess Wrigley Field.
Jim?
Mine, I grew up in New England. When I was a kid, I was a Red Sox fan, and I actually had the opportunity to work my first game at Fenway Park, which was just an unbelievable experience for not only myself, but it was great because I could bring family who, when you're in the minor leagues, you don't make any money. I worked my first big league game there. We all had a chance to celebrate together in a really, really cool place.
Well, I'll go back though with Wrigley. It wasn't necessarily because it was Wrigley. Wrigley was a tough ballpark to work. So there was mostly a lot of day games, and you got to enjoy the nice restaurants of Chicago.
There you go.
That's a solid answer, because you are right about Chicago cuisine is it's the best. So, gentlemen, thank you so much. Jim Reynolds, Gary Darling, thank you for your time on the podcast, but more importantly, thank you for everything that you continue to do for umpires, for officiating, for the officiating community. Everything that you're doing with UMPS Care and now Sports Officials Care is just amazing. It's exciting to see the growth of UMPS Care over the years, and now seeing other sports involved and knowing how intimately the two of you have been involved in that is really special. So we thank you for that. We thank you for your time on the podcast, and we're honored to have you on. So thank you so much. Nate, any closing thoughts?
No, just want to thank both of you, and to our listeners, thank you for joining us on the From A to Zebra podcast. Don't forget to check us on our Facebook, Instagram, and X for more information about the show. Until next time.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you very much for having us.
Absolutely. Thank you, gentlemen.
Be sure to hit that like button, follow, subscribe, and also catch From A to Zebra on Instagram at from_A_2_zebra, Facebook From A to Zebra podcast, and on X at From A to Zebra.